Welcome to Out Loud and In Progress, where real talk lives, healing happens, and no part of the journey gets left behind. I'm Leyah Sunshine, and around here we speak on love, grief, friendship, growth, and everything that life throws in the mix. This podcast ain't about being perfect. It's about being real, messy, magical, and still in motion. And sometimes we're going to do some laughing, some learning, but I promise to always be transparent with you and keep it real. So whether you're unfolding, unlearning, or just trying to hold it together, you do not have to do it alone. You can do it with me, Leyah Sunshine. So let's get into it.
Laughing through the lessons, growing real fast. No fake pop, just heart and finesse. Killing ain't linear, but we still say yes. We moving forward, flaws and all. Crying, loving, rising from the fall. This ain't polish, it's process, baby. But we keep showing up, even when it's shaky out. And in progress, talking through the problems and stress. Up to life, we unpacking the stress with good vibes, big laughs, say less. What?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Out Loud and In Progress. And if you don't know already, this is Leyah Sunshine. And as always, I am your host. And today's topic is going to be awesome, I feel, because I finally have a guest, like my first guest. And today we're just going to dig into something real and we're going to talk about communication and not just about talking, but the other component of communication, which is listening. When you listen deep, intentional, even when it's uncomfortable, but that worth it kind of communication. That worth it kind of listening. Because if we can be honest with ourselves, sometimes we're not really hearing each other. We're just waiting to speak. We've all been there. And I have someone with me today who I trust immensely, who knows how I work and how I move, and who has definitely seen both my good and bad communication moments. So we have T Diamond here with me. So let's get into it. Welcome.
Thank you.
Honestly, I do appreciate you doing this with me. I really do. And especially being my first guest. So,
Hey, yay.
all right. So let's talk. Let's talk about communication. Let's talk about the listening gap. So I'm gonna have some questions for you, and I want you to answer open and honestly as you can, because that's what this podcast is about. Out loud and in progress. So that means we're not going to have it all together, okay? Because that's what this is about. We want to show that real side of ourselves, that transparent side of ourselves. So are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So the listening gap. Do you think most people actually listen when they're having a conversation, or do you feel like they're just waiting to reply?
I think it depends the situation, what your tone is at the time. If you're upset, then probably not listening, to having a tendency to shut down, just wanting things to be over. So I think if the tone is correct, then you give people time to process and just be calm, then maybe the listening would be a little better.
And I talked about that in another podcast before this about the tone, because first of all, if you want somebody to at least attempt to listen to you, your tone does have to be correct. You can't just come at them any kind of way. If you want them to listen, your tone should be correct. Your mannerisms should be correct, welcoming, comforting. I do agree with that part. I also think a lot of times we are just listening to respond. We want to be right. We want to be on it. We want to be sharp. But sometimes it doesn't take that. Sometimes it just takes really listening to that person's feelings and emotions and letting them air it out and you being that sounding board. That was good. We just diving in. We just getting into it. Okay. All right. So this is a deep one. When was the last time you felt like you were heard, like deeply heard?
I think when I gave a premise as to, what my intentions are, what I'm hoping to get from the conversation, letting them know how I feel before I start the conversation. And then, go ahead, and talk with them. And making sure that they're open to receive what I have to say. 'Cause if they're not in that right mindset or, they might not be feeling it at the time, just giving them the option, to maybe talk later or, whatever the case may be. I'm not one to do a lot of talking. I think for the most part when I speak, people listen. I don't do a lot of speaking, and then when I do, it's something I'm really genuinely concerned about. So for the most part, I feel I have good people around me that really listen to what I have to say. If you're not a person that's just speaking a lot of mumbo jumbo all the time when you talk, people are like, hey, wait a minute. And they have a tendency to listen.
So, do you think people know when they're not listening, or is it usually just unintentional?
I think a little bit of both.
Okay.
If you're in a conversation and someone's not listening to you, responding, or not letting you talk, you can have a tendency to shut down. Or if a conversation goes on and on and on, maybe about the same thing, and it starts to feel like a beat down, you can have a tendency just to shut down and just like, okay, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, just to get there because you're not being heard.
I agree with that. I think it's a mixture of both. I think people know when they're not listening because they just over it. Like you said, they done shut down for the day.
Yeah.
The shop is closed. And then I also think it starts out unintentional. It may end up intentional, but it starts unintentional because again, you're just listening to kind of respond to them, to try to explain to them what's going on, and instead of just really hearing them, you're hearing their emotions. That brings up a good point. Not just hearing the words, but feeling everything in its totality. You know what I'm saying? How they talk, their emotions behind what they're saying at the moment. Because sometimes it could be painful for that other person just to talk. Because like you just said, like you're not a talker, right? So if you're talking, it may have been difficult for you to even have that conversation. So I try to take that into, consideration too. It may be difficult to have that conversation and being sensitive to that too. So yeah, I agree with you. So have you ever caught yourself zoning out or prepping for a comeback before the person is even finished?
I've zoned out, at times because if two people are trying to talk at the same time, nobody's hearing each other. And if I'm constantly asking you, let me talk, and you're not, then I just, it has a tendency to shut down. Like, you know what? Okay, you want me to talk? I'm not going to talk. Then sometimes the conversation goes on and on. And then by the time you say, oh, you're not responding, you're not saying anything, I'm going to check out. I don't forgot. I don't even know what you was asking because I've left.
I normally start out real calm, and I think once the other person like doesn't take into consideration my feelings, and they may say something that obviously shows that they're not considering my feelings. Now, I think there's a difference though between the person caring and considering feelings, right? Because a person can generally care for you, but within that conversation, because they may feel uncomfortable about it, they don't take into consideration feelings, and they may say something totally sideways or left. And then that's when you're right. I'm not hearing nothing you saying because you done tiss me off, and I'm over it. And now I'm like, nah, you listen to me, okay? You didn't listen to me before, and now you gonna listen.
Yeah, and it's confrontational. You got a problem.
Oh yeah, oh for sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
so
I don't start out confrontational, but if that person,
but at that point, nobody's hearing each other, so you need a timeout so the two people can regroup, calm down, and revisit what they're talking about.
I hate timeouts.
Well, sometimes timeouts is needed. It can help the conversation where it may not escalate as far as it would have, and it gives a person time to recollect.
But why can't grown folks just get it together, like right then?
Well, maybe they feel like they are together. Both people want to be heard at the same time, but nobody wants to be first and then second. Like, let me talk. Okay, when you're done, then I talk. That's an intelligent conversation.
Absolutely.
But it does not happen.
It should.
It should, right. It should. But it does not.
I feel like two grown folks should be able to talk and voice out their concerns, how they're feeling, without hurting the other person's feelings. And at the end of it, even if you haven't come to a so called resolution behind everything, the simple fact of the matter is if you care about the person, whether it's a friendship, relationship, whatever, right? You should want what's best for that other person. To me, that should be the intent behind the whole thing.
That may be the intent, but at the same time, you can't expect people to be where you are. They might need something that you don't need. So if they need that few minutes and that time is going to help their conversation proceed like you want it to, then out of common courtesy, you should grant that as long as they say, okay, give me a 30-minute break, hour break, but they need to make sure and be intentional that they come back within those 30 minutes. Not just to say, let me talk to you in 30 minutes and then vacate. But no, they need to be accountable. And if they say 30 minutes, come back in 30 minutes and resume the conversation. And the results will be a lot better.
I agree with you. I agree. I just don't like it. I agree with you though.
You don't have to like it.
You're right.
You know, if we
I
plan
just
to
want to
figure
get it over and done. But I do agree if the other person needs that time and they communicate, hey, I'll get back with you tomorrow, or I need to. Yeah, I agree. Now for me, I do need that time to say, hey, we'll talk about it tomorrow or whenever, because it feels like we'll never talk or disrespectful. I don't know the word for it.
But that's why they have to be accountable and say, I'll return in this matter now. And they can also say, I'm not negating the conversation. We can come back exactly where we left off. If need be, your feelings are valid. I'm taking into consideration what you're saying. I just need a minute.
Yeah, yeah. We should give our people a minute if they want a minute. And for the people that struggle like me, give them a minute.
Or two or three.
Or 4 or 5. Okay.
As long as they come back.
As long as they come back. Well, I mean, shoot, you want them to come back, but I guess if they don't come back, then I guess that's it.
Now you know.
Now you know. Okay. So let's get into another part of this. What gets in the way of all of this? So, what do you think gets in the way of real listening? Do you think it's ego? Could it be fear, distraction? What do you think gets in the way of people really listening to each other when they're communicating?
That's a good question. It could be a combination of things. I wouldn't say ego. I mean, because really, it shouldn't be harmful to listen. I think maybe what the conversation may be about, if you're premising what you may be about, and you may get some fear about what it may be or what the results may be, could be. In relationships and friendships, and all people say, I need to talk to you. You know, it's kind of, even when your parents come up and say, come on, we need to talk. It's just a feeling you get. Maybe it's the unexpected. I don't know, but it's that feeling you get. But at the same time, you need to be open to receive, what's being said to you. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean fear doesn't exist. You just have to open yourself up to receive, because could be something good, not necessarily always bad, but I think just the premise.
And even if it's like bad for the moment, it could turn out to be good. And when I say that, you grow from it. You learn from it. I'm going to go with what you said, but I'm going to go even deeper. I do think it does stem from how you were raised in your childhood and things of that nature. And I'm going to tell you why. It does stem to, like, I don't think, okay, so let's talk about how and I can't even talk about how I was raised, because really I wasn't raised like this. But people that I talk to, okay, so my husband, for example, he was raised just to, hey, somebody told him to do something, you do it. You can't ask no questions about it. If he was to even maybe ask questions in general about things, they didn't have time to answer, or they just would give a fluff answer, and most people weren't taught to clearly communicate. Now, with my children, I tell them, and this is how I was raised too. I was taught, hey, I can talk about anything as long as I know how to talk about it. That means not disrespect my parents, but I could voice how I felt. I could voice if I possibly disagreed with something, and they would talk to me. And that's how I talk to my children. Like, if they do something, I'm going to have a conversation. I'm not just going to bark at them. You know what I'm saying? Hey, and get them to think about what they've done and communicate with me. Well, mom, this happened, and I think this happened, and that's what got in the way of this or that. Most people weren't taught to do that. It was just like whenever people would talk to each other, it always had to be like a big thing, or I'm right, you're wrong. I say this to you a lot, like, two things can be true at the same time. But I think a lot of people, they only one thing can be true, one time. But I think it does stem to, like, ridicule growing up, or your parents or whoever was raising you weren't good communicators and weren't taught to communicate. I don't know what you think.
I think it's a combination, because some people, weren't raised. Some people, just different circumstances. Some people had to learn things on their
On
own.
their own, right?
Some people were allowed to communicate. So, I mean, I guess it's a combination, I would have to say.
I find the people that were taught to communicate are very slim to none.
Well, even if you're taught to communicate, some traumas and things throughout life can hinder those things. So it just depends on where you at in your walk of life.
I agree.
What has transpired.
Trauma for me would be like if I've opened up about a certain thing and then I was met with disdain or ridicule, or I felt like that person did not want to communicate, then it would stifle me from further communicating with them. And to be honest, even treading very lightly on that topic with anyone else, because mentally you think that that's maybe what you will run into with other people. And that's why finding your people is important too. That's why it's important to have your community, your group, whatever that community is. Like if you like to crochet, be with your crochet people. Because if you with people that don't like to crochet, of course they're gonna be like, what you doing? You over there knitting, you know what I'm saying? So that, of course, that's just a general thing, but that's why it's important to like find your people that kind of like understand you and understand your quirks and all of that. But yeah, it gets, I think it just gets so much deeper. And I will put in here what taught, I've always knew how to communicate, but what taught me to communicate even deeper, because me going through life kind of hinders some of that. Going back to what I just said just now, because of other people and things I may have shared and the ridicule I faced. But what really helped me communicate more? Therapy. Just honest. Like going to therapy and understanding I don't have to feel bad about communicating certain things as long as I knew how. And if they felt some kind of way, that's on them. It's not on me. Do I still struggle with that? Yes. But I know that's the way I should move, and operate. So, another question for you. How do you personally stay present when someone is sharing something with you that's emotional or hard?
I try to listen and really listen to what they're saying and, put myself, in their shoes, and feel what they may be feeling, if I was in the same situation. And, just really offering some, advice or whatever, based on if I've been in that situation. If not, just, be confident and just listen.
So, what if what they're communicating with you about is about you? Like you were or are the catalyst for whatever they're going through, and they communicate that with you. How do you deal with it the same? Do you deal with it differently?
Well, I'd have to take a moment and just look at myself and just ask myself, is that really happening? Or, just take what they said and just really think about it.
So let's go back to the first thing you just said. You said you look at it and say, is this really happening?
Mhm.
Explain that for me. Is what really happening?
So whatever you said, if I'm the catalyst, what am I the catalyst in? And what can I do to make that better? I don't know what the situation.
I got you. So let's put a pin for a second. Does it matter if you're the catalyst?
No, but you said if I was the catalyst, so
So you already know. If I were to come to you and say, hey, XYZ, this thing you did hurt, da da da, or this thing you said hurt, da 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 da, you already know that you're the catalyst and you have caused that.
okay, so in that situation, if I'm the catalyst, I will, acknowledge your feelings, apologize for what I've done, and ask you, what can I do to make it better, or so that this doesn't happen again, so that you're not hurt.
Have you ever struggled in that area?
I have.
So what made you come to that epiphany that you should listen and take their feelings in
Well,
consideration?
because I ask myself, how can I be better? Or how can I have done the situation better after I've heard like what they're upset about after they've told me these things. And that's where the time comes in, so that you can process those things and trust the process. So there is a process to everything, and those things don't happen every night. So in that process, learn, evaluate, so that you can evaluate what has happened. Evaluate what's happened, so you can apply what you've learned.
Yeah.
If you don't evaluate, you can't apply. You can't learn.
Okay. I am instant gratification. I want to solve everything instantly. I want to help people instantly. I want to make things better instantly. And I do think I project that onto others, and I shouldn't. So that's another thing that I'm working on, because I do things instantly. I do expect that from others.
And you can't expect people to be where you are.
Absolutely.
It's your process.
Absolutely.
You have to allow people their own process, and their
Absolutely.
own steps.
So, do you feel like people just really they really want to understand someone when they're communicating with them? Or do you feel like they just want to be right?
I think in general they want to understand because sometimes there's not a lot that comes with being right. Like, what does that solve? What is the price of being right? It's not always good, sustainable. So sometimes being right is painful.
Correct.
Sometimes being right is costly.
Correct.
So there's a bigger picture.
The price of being right is actually the cost of you possibly disregarding the other person's feelings. You may be right, but that's not what the top priority is at that
You
moment.
may not be right, in that moment, but
Right.
at that time, you need to focus on if they're the one having the problem, you need to focus on what's wrong with them, making them feel better, acknowledging their feelings, and letting them know that they're safe and in a safe space. And then when they are, you can come back at a later date and
And have that conversation.
discuss yours and how you feel about it.
That is correct. And then trying to figure out how you can go forward to avoid those things again. But at that moment, if someone comes to you at their most vulnerable, that is definitely not the moment to be right. And I think some people do want to feel right, but I do also think some people want to understand. They just don't know how to understand or how to communicate. So yeah, interesting. How do you handle it when you don't feel heard? Do you shut down? Do you speak up? Or is it something else that you do?
That's a loaded question. There are times, when I can shut down, I'll shut down because I'm not going to waste talking about something serious or whatever, if you're not going to hear what I'm saying. If you're not open to receive, it goes back to.
I think that goes both ways too,
Yeah.
though. You ever thought that you weren't open to receive?
That could be, but that's when, I can also, wait, take my time to process and determine how I want to proceed from there. Or I may just come back at it may not just be the right time. I may come back again, or I may come back differently. Maybe my approach was wrong. So it just depends. I mean, it's not a one I'll beat all. I will come back and try again because I will be heard some kind of way. If I gotta write it, sing a song, I don't know.
Yeah, it does. I think it does go both ways because I found in our communication, you are definitely a shutdown person. You definitely a person that needs that time once you've shut down because, you and your twin, which is my son, you are very much alike. And I'm going to be honest, knowing you has helped me deal with him. Like, honestly, like 1,000%. I see it and I'm like, okay, let me give him a minute. Or I see it and I'll say, okay, A, don't shut down. I need you to come back to me. Okay. And listen. And sometimes he'll come back. And then sometimes he done already went down the deep abyss.
Already gone?
Already in the hole. So I'm like,
Wait on that U-turn.
okay. And then a lot of times he does come back. Okay, mommy, I'm ready to talk. Or mommy, I'm sorry. Or mommy, I understand this or that. And that has taught me so much because again, I am spitfire. Like even the other day, it was something he did. And I was just asking all these questions. Why did you do that? What happened? Da, da, da. Then I was like, okay, let me slow down. I'm doing a spitfire. I slowed it down because I know that could make him shut down. And I'm like, Aiden, tell me what's up. And then we talked and then everything was good. So yes, shutting down. I looked at it. Okay, no, let me not even lie. I still look at it as a bad. I was about to laugh, but I understand that with some people it is necessary.
Well, like you say with kids too, because our son, one day we was talking with him and he was upset, didn't want to talk anymore. And I'm at work at 4 o'clock in the morning. He calls me. Wow, I'm like, what? He's like, can we talk? Dude, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Like I've been at home like all this time, like now you want to talk. But he had that time. He came to me like, okay, I'm ready to talk now. So that time sometimes is important, or realizing that you can't have a conversation right now when two people are definitely angry.
Yeah.
And, coming back later.
So I think we should talk about and we might have talked about some of this as we've been blabbing, but building better conversations. What are some of the things that someone has done that made you feel like, oh, wow, they're actually listening to me? So, what were some of the clues that were given that you knew now they're listening and they're not doing their normal?
I think it depends. Like, if you're in person with them, you got, nonverbal communication says a lot, like we talked about, body language, stuff like that. And probably if they're quiet while you're talking, or you get an even exchange, if I get to say what I'm trying to say and get finished, and then they come back and say what they have to say, or if they're taking into consideration what I've said, or able to, maybe repeat some of the things I've said and showing concern, during the conversation about what I've said. and acknowledging that they understand what I'm saying, or at least, feel what I'm feeling or hear what I'm saying.
Correct.
So those are traits that, that, a person's actually listening.
Absolutely. All the last part I totally agree with. Like saying those key things that make me feel like you're hearing me, that I feel safe with you, that I have shared this information. Showing concern, care. In person, you may can look at a person and see those things, but like if you're on the phone or whatever, you may not see those same things. So, again, me and my instant gratification self, I take too much silence as a negative.
On the contrary, too much talk can. So, I mean,
But you know what? I see it differently. A lot of talk helps me. As long as it's talking now, not
if
arguing,
it's
not.
talking and not like repetitive, or people tell you they got it or they get something and you just constantly, or you're over something, you pass that hurdle and you just keep coming up, you just keep beating it, beating it, beating it. So yeah, there's a difference.
Let's talk about this. So, somebody I know, their partner did something that they consider cheating. So it wasn't like they slept with the person, it was just something that broke their trust.
Mhm.
They had a short conversation, and this person felt like, okay, well, I'm gonna let it go because I don't want to keep beating them up about it. But something came up later that connected with that, and the person brought up their insecurities at that time. The other person that broke the trust, it's like, I thought we were done with that. I thought we were over that. But being that they brought it back up, they weren't. But I think they were trying to save face with them, in the beginning, to not put them through all that. Right. So, having said that, sometimes it may feel right like a beat up, but what it is that person really processing it and getting it out so that they can feel comfortable. Just because you may have apologized and confirmed with them their feelings, they may just still need more comforting. And if you're the person on the other side that has caused them the harm, do you feel like it's worth it to just put a little more effort? Now, I can see if we say everything good and then the person just but if they're still trying to process that, why take it as a beat up?
Can they verbalize that?
The person that's hurt, you're saying what they should say, I'm still not over this.
Like, can we still talk about this? I'm still having a problem with this, blah, blah, blah.
I guess they could.
I think that if they could, that would make it better, because sometimes that's a problem when people say they're fine and deep down inside they're not.
But what if they never said they were fine, though?
But what if they did?
I mean, now, if they said they're fine,
I mean, in this situation,
I got
maybe
you.
they didn't say that, but I'm just saying, like, if they can just say what they need, if they need to talk about it more,
Okay.
that they're not okay.
So they literally need to say, hey, I want to talk about this more. I still feel uneasy. I need a little more reassuring. That would make a difference?
I think so.
Okay. Okay. So, guys, you hear that out there in podcast land. You need to literally say, hey, I still need to process this with you.
Correct.
Interesting. Thank you. That's an insight there. That's a what do you call it? The key for the day. What does it look like to be a good listener?
To actually, do that. Just listen without talking. Just really hear what's being said without interruption. Really listen to what's being said so that you can take in and process what's being said to you before you respond. Also, taking a minute before you respond to actually think about what it is you want to say. Because sometimes you blurt things out too quickly, it comes out the wrong way. Or maybe you just really, didn't mean to say that. But if you take a minute to just think about what you're getting ready to say, it will make a difference.
I agree. Think about what you're going to say before you say it. Actually hear and listen to that person. What do you think we've learned about each other's communication styles over time?
So I think that we've learned that, we need to, grant time when it's needed, to take a time out, and to really listen and to understand each other's feelings. Like for me, to understand that even if I've hurt you, I've said something that hurt you, instead of me being so upset that I want to caused it and forgetting about how it made you feel. Even if you're wrong or whatever the case may be, just taking into consideration how you made the other person feel or how it made you feel. Voicing those things and showing that you care and concern, empathy for what you're going through.
And there is a difference between intention and impact. What you may have intended for that thing to be, the impact may have been totally different because that person could have been in a different mind frame, in a different area of their brain. And just because you've meant for something to be something doesn't mean that it actually will come across that way. And I appreciate learning that. What I've learned about you is you definitely need time. Time to just think, time to ponder, time after time. And learning that when you get that time, it helps. For me, I have to learn because time sometimes puts me in a worse mind. I can't explain it. I don't know why. It's like I can't get it out of my mind. And I think that's what bothers me until it's resolved. But I do understand that everybody's not the same. Everybody has a different method. So that's what I learned about you over time.
Yeah, and just, trust the process.
Okay. Well, guys, you have heard it here. Sometimes people just need a moment. Sometimes they just need time. We got to watch the way we speak to people that come to us when they're at their most vulnerable. And that most vulnerable is when they come to you and need you to hear, need to listen. They want to express their feelings, how they feel, maybe about something you caused. Just us taking a beat, not internalizing it, and just thinking about how they feel in that moment. And it's not necessarily disregarding your feelings because you are honoring your feelings if you listen to the person that you care about and care about them in that moment. This conversation reminded me that real listening is an act of choice. And it's not always easy, especially when you're feeling emotional or tired or you feel misunderstood, because that's the worst one to me when you feel misunderstood. But it's how we build trust. It's how we show up for the people that we care about. So here's a question for all of you out there in podcast land. Are you hearing the people in your life, or are you just waiting to speak? T. Diamond, thank you so much for being here with me, doing this podcast with me, and being real. We'll be back next time with more truth, more transparency, working on ourselves out loud and in progress. And love you. And if you haven't, follow our podcast on all platforms and give us a rating. Thank you for coming back. Until next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to Out Loud and In Progress with Leyah Sunshine. If you enjoyed our podcast, please follow us on all social media platforms under Out Loud and In Progress. If you would like to make contact with us, you can email us at outloudandinprogress@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Hope this podcast touched you in some way, shape, or form, and we will see you on the next podcast.